Something that's really important for you guys to understand with Shakespeare comedies, but especially with this one, is that drama was not completely new to England and Britain at this time. They had what are called religious plays, where they would have traveling groups of players go around, and that's typically what they put on, is plays that had a religious theme or tone to them, and they were meant to teach those people to, the religious concepts of the time of being good citizens and being good people. And so they had that moral aspect to them. It wasn't until Shakespeare's time, he and his contemporaries were the ones inventing drama to just be drama and not have that that task of trying to uphold the religious ideals of the time. It was, yes, to explore different ideas within society, but it was also just to entertain people. And so one of the things that came out of this was stock characters. And these were characters that the audience would have been very familiar with because they fit into a box. They were very stereotypical. It was characters that, we see them and they dress like this, they act like this, we can expect to see these kinds of actions from them. And that's not different. We have a very similar set of stock characters today. The cheerleader type, the jock type, the theater nerd, the chess nerd, those are all different stock characters, and we expect them to dress a certain way and act a certain way based on the fact that they are this type of character. And so it correlates very much with what we see in today's society as well. We just might not be familiar with their particular type of stock characters. Another important aspect of Shakespearean comedy is what's called the green world. And the green world is where all the crazy stuff happens within Shakespeare's comedies. It's less civilized. Again, remember, the conflict is between social groups. And so Shakespeare needs to get his characters out of that civilized world in order for things to really be developed and analyzed and looked at within the play, so that they can come back and have this change happen, whether it be within the society or within the characters themselves. So this green world is less civilized, meaning there's just not as many societal rules. Again, thinking about this and applying it to things that we see today, Peter Pan is a great example. Neverland is the quintessential green world where the rules don't apply there. You don't have to grow up and you don't have to follow the adult rules of life. You can go and you can and have a good time, and things are not necessarily structured like they are here in the real world. And so, just like Wendy and her brothers, they kind of find that sometimes those societal rules help us. That in the moment we might be happy to have that freedom and that ability, but that the rules still apply for us. It's not always the case with Shakespeare. Oftentimes they find that those rules really are repressive and they need to change them. But, it kind of depends on what view you're taking. So this is another way of kind of thinking about Shakespeare, and not only his comedies, but most of his plays. You can see that the exposition, which we've talked about, the beginning, introducing the characters, happens in Act 1. We have the rising action in Act 2, where a lot of the tension happens. Act 3 is actually where the main conflict issues happen. Act 4, we see the falling out, which can still have a lot of tension as part of it, but it slowly is decreasing. And then Act 5, we have the resolution, again ending in typically with a wedding scene. In Taming of the Shrew, Shakespeare kind of flips some of this stuff. In Act 3, you're going to see a wedding, and that's going to be the high point of the play. And then we're gonna see what falls out because of that wedding. But that's interesting that he decides to put a wedding in Act 3 versus Act 5, which is the traditional aspect. There is still kind of a wedding in Act 5, but it's not the traditional role. So he does play around with those traditions a lot with this play. Another thing I'll point out is you're going to see me writing the acts and scenes and line numbers like this with a capital Roman numeral, and then lowercase Roman numeral, and then the line. So this would read Act 4, Scene 3, lines 80 through 85. And that's something you just kind of need to get used to seeing and writing and knowing what those mean. So just kind of keep that in mind. Trying to move on. Sorry, this isn't working. Next. So another big thing about Shakespeare's comedies is there is a lot of mistaken identities, and people thinking that somebody is somebody that they're not, or a lot of times it's women dressing as men, which again is kind of a funny element already, but then you put the fact of we've got a male actor playing a female actor who's pretending to be a male character in the play, and so you know that adds in another extra element of funny when it comes to Shakespeare. But one of the things that you've got to kind of do, which is interesting, is that it's called suspension of disbelief. So within the elements of the story, within the fictional world that's created, you've got to have some kind of, yes, I understand that in the real world that probably wouldn't happen, but in this world it does, and you've kind of got to let that happen. And the example with that is like Superman. In the real world, there's no way that a pair of glasses are going to be the thing that makes it so we can't tell whether he's Superman or not, right? Takes the glasses off, he becomes Superman. Puts the glasses on, he becomes Clark Kent. And nobody sees the difference between them. You know, we know that in the real world that's probably not true, but we allow our suspension of disbelief to happen so that within that realm of Superman, that is true. And you're going to see that in Shakespeare, where they put on, you know, a different character's clothes, or they pretend to be this other character, and you're just supposed to believe that everybody doesn't recognize them. And yeah, that is kind of the case, and you're going to see that a lot. In fact, it gets really confusing because you've got people pretending to be other people in this play, and it's hard to tell who is who and who knows who each other are, and it